Forget the highlight clips. Forget the lazy takes. The Miami boat trip is back, and a Giants legend just reopened one of Big Blue's most painful arguments. First, what he admitted. Then, why that moment still follows this franchise. And then, the part that changes how we should judge the whole thing. By the end, you'll know whether the boat trip was the real problem or just the easiest excuse. Big Blue lock-in. Word just broke around a Giants legend revisiting that infamous image, the one every G-Men fan knows, without even hearing the full story. The photo, the timing, the playoff cloud over it. And yes, the reaction is heating up again. Real talk before we dive in. Eagles fans love acting like they own the loudest football space online. I don't buy it. If you want a channel built by Big Blue, for Big Blue Nation, hit subscribe right now and help this channel run past their noise. Every new sub is a flag planted for New York tough football. And if you're riding with the G-Men, comment, "Let's go Giants," and let the rivals see it. Now let's get to story 1. So here is the reopening of the wound. A Giants legend is finally revisiting the Miami boat trip, the one that haunted Big Blue after that playoff loss. And he is not doing what a lot of people expected. He is not saying the trip caused the defeat. He is not blaming a boat for what happened on the field. But he is admitting something just as important. The optics were terrible. In his words, it was just a bad look. That matters. A lot. Because for years, the debate was always framed the same way. Either you believe the trip was reckless and symbolic of a team losing focus, or you believed it was overblown nonsense pushed by outsiders who wanted a clean, easy talking point after a loss. What this revisit does is split that argument right down the middle. It says both sides had a piece of the truth. The truth nobody's telling you is this. In the NFL, perception can become reality faster than the game tape can correct it. If a playoff team does something public, flashy, and easy to remember right before a loss, that moment gets fused to the result forever. Not because it proved anything, but because it looked like it proved everything. And that is why this still lives. The trip became bigger than football, bigger than scheme, bigger than execution, bigger than whatever actually went wrong in that playoff game. Once the image was out there, the story wrote itself. Miami. Boat. Smiles. Then a loss. That's all people needed. The league is brutal that way, and New York is even more brutal. When you wear that Giants logo, when you carry Big Blue expectations, you don't get judged like everybody else. You get judged through a spotlight. Personal opinion here. I think the legend is right to reject the idea that the trip itself caused the loss, but I also think he is 100% right to call it a bad look. Both can be true at the same time. If you're a playoff team, image discipline matters, especially when the whole football world is waiting to bury you after one bad result. That's my read on it. Disagree? Drop your reasoning below. And here's the bigger thing. Story 2 is where this really starts getting uncomfortable, because the boat trip did not become famous just because it happened. It became famous because perception beat reality, and that is a lesson the Giants still have to learn. Now, what most channels miss is the second layer. This is not just an old controversy getting recycled for clicks. This is about why certain moments follow certain franchises forever, and why the Giants, more than most teams, never get the benefit of the doubt when a distraction is visible. The key angle from this development is sharp. The legend does not blame the trip for the playoff loss, but he openly admits the optics were terrible. Just a bad look. Short phrase. Huge meaning. Because that phrase explains why the photo survived for years in the minds of fans, rivals, and national media. Perception overwhelms reality in this league when the visual is too powerful. Think about it. A boat trip is not hard to understand. It does not need all 22 film. It does not need locker room access. It does not need advanced breakdown. One image can become the whole story. And once that happens, every real football reason underneath it gets buried under the headline people like more. That is the trap. For playoff teams, the rules are harsher. Nobody cares if a losing team looks distracted. They expect dysfunction. But if a playoff team shows a visible detour from the locked-in Warrior image fans expect, and then loses, that image becomes evidence in the court of public opinion, whether it deserves to or not. The standard changes. The story gets moralized. The team is not just beaten. It is judged. And if we're being honest as Big Blue Nation, that is part of why this still stings. Not just because the Giants lost, but because the loss came attached to a visual that rivals could weaponize forever. Eagles fans love it. Cowboys fans never let it go. Commanders fans use it as proof of collapse. One picture gave every rival fanbase free ammunition. I'll say it. In my opinion, This is one of the most damaging image moments in modern Giants history. Not because it proved the team quit, not because it explains the playoff loss by itself, but because it handed the outside world a permanent shortcut for disrespecting Big Blue. That's why I think this still matters all these years later. Half of you are nodding. Half want to fight me. Comment which half you're in. Now I want your take. Comment, bad look, if you think the trip became a fair symbol of lost focus. Comment, bad timing, if you think it was mostly a lazy excuse after the loss. No middle ground. Make me defend my position. Quick reminder, if you've made it this far, you're Big Blue for Real. Hit subscribe now, because story 3 is the one that hits hardest. And stay with me here, because the next part is the real bomb. Not the photo, not even the reaction. The reason this story still matters is what it reveals about how Giants history gets written and rewritten long after the game is over. Now, what you've really been waiting for is the question underneath the question. Was the boat trip actually the problem, or did it simply become the easiest explanation for a playoff collapse? That is the story. That is the fight. And honestly, that is the wound. Because once a loss happens, people rush to simplify it. They want one reason, one image, one moment, one villain. The boat trip fit perfectly. It was public, memorable, emotional, and easy to replay. That made it powerful. But powerful is not the same thing as true. Here is the late reveal at the center of all this. The Giants legend opening up now is basically forcing everybody to sit in the discomfort of a messy answer. No, he does not blame the trip for the loss. Yes, he admits it was just a bad look. That middle ground is the hardest thing for sports culture to accept, because sports culture wants clean blame. Now connect that to the first 2 parts of this video. Story 1 gave us the admission. Story 2 explained why perception can crush reality. This third part is where those two collide. The boat trip was not nothing. It mattered because optics matter. But it also was not the magic key that unlocked the defeat. The real problem is that once a team loses after a visible distraction, every football detail gets swallowed by the easier story. That is how memory works in the NFL, especially in New York. This franchise carries history differently. The Giants are not judged like a random team. They are judged like a flagship. When Big Blue wins, the city celebrates toughness, discipline, pride. When Big Blue loses after a public distraction, the city reads betrayal into it. That is why this one image lasted. It hit identity. It challenged what fans believe the G-men are supposed to be. And that is also why the legend revisiting it matters now. He is not just reliving an awkward memory. He is correcting the record without pretending the record was clean. That takes honesty. He is saying, in effect, stop using the trip as the full explanation, but don't insult fans by acting like the image meant nothing. That is a grown answer. That is a football answer. And frankly, more former players should talk like that. But here is the extra beat nobody should ignore. If the Giants had won, the boat trip becomes a footnote, maybe even a swagger story. Fans laugh. Rivals go quiet. The image turns from indictment into attitude. The result is what weaponized the optics. The loss gave the picture teeth. Without the loss, there is no haunting myth. With the loss, the myth became permanent. I'm going on record right now. In my opinion, the boat trip became one of the most overrated explanations for a Giants loss, and one of the most justified criticisms of Giants optics at the exact same time. That's the paradox. That is why this debate never dies. I think anyone treating it as only a scandal is wrong, and anyone treating it as meaningless is also wrong. Hold me to this. Save the timestamp. Tell me I'm wrong. Now you have your answer to the question I asked earlier. Drop it in the comments. Bad look or bad timing. I want to see where Big Blue Nation lands on this. And if this analysis hit, like the video. That's how we keep the algorithm pushing Giants breakdowns that actually say something. 3 stories. 1 picture. Here's what it all means together. A Giants legend reopened the boat trip debate. He refused the lazy version of the story, but he also admitted the obvious truth about the optics. Then we zoomed out and saw the real lesson. For playoff teams, especially teams wearing the Giants badge, perception can become legacy overnight. And finally, we got to the core. The image survived because the loss gave it power, not because the image alone explains football. Listen, next video, I'm breaking down the biggest modern moments that shaped the national image of the Giants, and which ones were fair versus completely fake. If you're Big Blue for Real, you need that on your feed. Subscribe right now, turn on the bell, and do not trust YouTube to hand it to you unless you tell the algorithm this channel matters to you. This is how Big Blue Nation builds its own space, not the Eagles, not the Cowboys, not anybody else. And drop your final answer below. Bad look or bad timing. I'm reading the replies, and I'm jumping in. But listen closely. One decision always remains after stories like this. How does this franchise want to be seen moving forward? Because image is not fake in this league. It affects how every mistake gets judged. It affects how every loss gets framed. And for a team trying to protect its identity, that matters more than people want to admit. And there is a bigger competitive angle too. Rivals are always waiting for the Giants to hand them an easy joke. Eagles fans feast on it. Cowboys fans recycle it. Commanders fans borrow it. The next version of this story does not need to be a boat trip. It can be any visible distraction, any loose image, any moment that lets the outside world write the script before the game even starts. That is why this revisit matters now. It is old history, yes, but it is also a warning. Big Blue, the battle is here. Stay locked, stay loud, and keep this fan base stronger than the noise around it. Subscribe, plant your flag, and let's go Giants.